ANY millions and millions of Americans twice voted for President Obama and then voted for Donald Trump, which makes no sense if you see the world through a left-right prism, obviously, but makes complete sense if you see it through an anti-establishment because Obama's appeal, fraudulent though it was I'm this skinny guy with this weird last name who hasn't been in Washington and has no
I'm not a Bush.
in Washington. Right, I'm not a Clinton. I'm not a Clinton.
Yeah.
And
but he turned out
that
to be
was his
one,
appeal.
basically.
Right, no, he was. It was fraudulent, of course. That was, but at least he had a credible claim to present himself as that. And you go back to Obama's 2008 campaign, and it was all about we're going to radically change Washington.
And the information, at least that's been publicized, is that Barry came as a 10-year-old kid from Indonesia and somehow just waltzed into that school. Barry used to brag that he had this cocaine, which was somewhat newsworthy because it was such an expensive item back then. If for those who lived in that era, cocaine was in its powder form. It was extraordinarily expensive. Barry was broke. He didn't have any liquid cash. By the way, he never worked at Baskin Robbins. That's a total lie.
And this kind of model that starts here in Hawaii has expanded to Washington, D.C.
Above view of Washington resembles the goat of Mendez.
As long as we have a working weapon by the end of June. Right, General?
I wouldn't know, Dave. I haven't had a working weapon since Korea.
Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, had staged a fake news conference Tuesday with agency staffers posing as news reporters.
Had its own employees, you see them sitting down right there, pretend to be reporters and ask the questions.
This is an excerpt of the fake news conference where the FEMA staff asked their boss, friendly questions.
Are you happy with FEMA's response so far?
I'm very happy with FEMA's response so far to make sure that we understand the situation and can bring the right support to the state. This is a FEMA and a federal government that's leaning forward, not waiting to react, and you have to be pretty pleased to see that.
Finally have a permanent place to call home as well. Small Business Administration is making low-interest federal disaster loans available to Hawaiian businesses, many of them you see here burned to the ground, homeowners and renters, and nonprofits. If you need help.
Your exploits in the fire department, I think you've got the courage.
Climate change is making hurricanes stronger, fueling wildfires, and making other weather events more disastrous and expensive.
Over the past 2 years, a third of Americans have been personally affected by extreme weather conditions.
As we enter hurricane and wildfire season, FEMA Director Deanne Criswell explains that.
And so it was about 4 o'clock, and I went out and I saw the fire, and you couldn't even see the gateway because it was covered with smoke. And everyone's standing around just looking. And I said, I think we should get out of here because of the speed of this wind. It could be here in 2 minutes.
Extreme weather is also becoming more erratic.
In the year-round severe weather seasons now, from atmospheric rivers that we saw in January in California. We see wildfires and tornadoes in December.
The Biden administration says it's investing in several strategies to fight climate change and natural disasters and help communities adapt.
Record funding to increase community resilience to drought, flooding, and wildfires.
Looking at what we think the risks are going to be 5 or 10 years from now, put those mitigation measures in place today, start working on them today, so that they can begin to reduce the impacts that these communities are facing.
The administration says in the end, those measures will cost less than the damage done without them.
From Safeway to there, not one car had moved. And people walking in front of the people in the cars are saying, would you like a ride? And they go, oh, okay. And they'd get in. They ask now, no, you better get out of here, you know. But they just, we were told to evacuate by car.
Apparently over 1,000 body bags and mats and containers and refrigerated trucks on the other side of the island right now. The government's trying to blame them. They didn't sound a siren. There was no helicopters that came. People had gone and picked their kids up from school and brought them home and left them home. No warning. No military came. The whole community is mourning the deaths of over 1,500 people. They killed innocent men, women, and children by not helping by not sounding alarms. People were asleep in their homes with their babies and their children.
Magoo here. That's why I'm running for president. As they say in my neighborhood, look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other guy or woman. Look me over. Thanks for the opportunity. I'd be happy to answer questions.
I have a brain cloud.
I think World War II was my favorite war.
Oh, did you see the stuff with Warren Buffett, Dick Cheney, and Barack Obama are all cousins? They're related. Did you see that?
I heard about it. So he selected
CNN did that.
So really, he was all part of the plan. He was.
Yeah. Also, an interesting other relative is Brad Pitt, the actor.
Sure. Why didn't you say something?
Why didn't you?
Why is it easy now? I don't know.
That's why I'm running for president. As they say in my neighborhood, look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other guy or woman. Look me over. Thanks for the opportunity. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Watch tonight the story of a 7th grader from Salinas who claims to have made a major discovery about President Obama. She and her grandfather say that President Obama is related to all but one U.S. president. We get more tonight from Action News reporter Felix Cortez, who's live in our Salinas newsroom.
Well, Dan, the youngster spent the summer, really all summer, tracing the family tree of our presidents. Her conclusion that all the presidents, with the exception of one, share the same grandfather.
Well, first we start off with George Washington at the top, and then it goes to John Adams, Thomas Jefferson.
11-year-old Bridget Davigno says she's made a first-of-its-kind discovery that President Obama and all the presidents before him, with the exception of one, are related and descendants of a former king of England.
No, they are all cousins,
I
and they're grandsons of John Locke.
Davigno says she spent countless hours on the internet over the summer researching the lineage of our presidents, a project that started with her trying to trace her own family tree.
But I'm the first historian to do all the presidents.
And this morning, Hawaiian officials say they're determined to make sure that the false alarm that sent the entire state into panic never happens again.
Yeah, for 38 minutes yesterday, people feared that there was a missile flying through the air and about to hit Hawaii. And it's because of this alert. Ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. Now, this is a warning that was sent to people's phones. They showed up on their TVs. They played on the radio stations across the state.
State officials say all of this panic was caused by someone hitting the wrong button.
3 weeks since the wildfire disaster on Maui, and tonight boiling tensions at a news conference as Maui's mayor and the state's incident commander answered questions on their whereabouts and what they knew the night Lahaina went up in flames. Mahea Lani Richardson joins us now with the latest. Mahea.
Well, Ash, for weeks, H&N Investigates has been asking questions on who was in charge of Maui's Emergency Command Center the night of the deadly fire, and why county leaders were apparently unaware of the inferno when Maui first responders were on the front lines. Mayor Bisson has deflected questions on his communication with the state's incident commander, Major General Ken Hara. Here's the tense exchange that just happened on the apparent communication breakdown.
I can't speak to what or whose responsibility it was to communicate directly.
You're the boss of this island.
I am.
So yes, you can speak. Let him answer.
I'm saying I can't say who was responsible for communicating with General Howard.
So you were not in communication with anybody at this point with the state?
No, I was in communication with the state. We were on a meeting earlier that morning on a Zoom call.
Earlier that morning, but you were not in communication with the emergency response, the state, as that fire barreled down and in the many hours afterwards?
Well, first of all, when you say that fire, which one are you talking about? We had three going on at the same time.
There were two in Lahaina, the first one, and that grew into the second one, but I'm specifically talking about that time period where hospitals were packed, social media showed the fire, so people went for their lives, and yet...
Well, I wasn't on social media, so I can't speak. First of all, I'm not going to speak to social media. I wasn't on social media. We didn't have time for that. But I'm referring to the fire that was going on in Kula, not the two fires in Lahaina as well.
Which is like,
well, I'm going to answer your question. I don't know who spoke to them.
Are these aluminum?
Yeah, that's cast aluminum wheels.
Cast aluminum wheel, you can see it melted.
And the windshield on the other side?
Look at the windshield. That is a windshield right there that is completely melted. We have some jumper cables in the back of the vehicle. We have some cast aluminum here that's pulverized.
It's just dust.
How is that possible for a grass fire that did not come from this direction? Because you can see there's nothing that's been burned over here. What could cause that type of destruction when you have a grass fire on this side that obviously didn't connect? But even if it was a grass fire,
and it's still only half burned. I mean,
yeah, you can see there's even some grass over here that's still standing. It's not even been burned. So even down below, directly below this, you can see some wood fence posts that were burned. But you can see all that grass is still good. So how do you get this car this hot?
Emergency alert. In the state of Hawaii, we have a statewide alert and warning system, which we also call SAWS. That involves not only the siren warning system, but as well as IPAWS. IPAWS is the Integrated Public Alerts and Warning System provided by FEMA, and that has the emergency alert system, also known as EAS. It also has the wireless emergency alerts, which is known as WIA.
H&N Investigates confirmed the head of Maui County's emergency management agency, Herman Ndaya, was also on hand, along with as many as 6 leaders from the state's emergency management office.
There were consultations about the fires among local, state, and FEMA participants.
We asked both Maui County and the state who was left in charge while those local emergency officials attended the meeting, and at what time they were made aware of the catastrophe unfolding in Lahaina. Despite multiple requests, those questions remain unanswered.
And there are reports police barricades may have slowed down residents fleeing the flames. Eddie Dowd has an explanation from the head of Maui Police.
Maui Police Chief confirms to H&N that there were barricades set up in Lahaina to keep people away from downed power lines. The information is being spotlighted in international press, but the chief is pushing back against criticism, telling H&N it's too premature to second-guess those decisions. This drone video shows rows of charred cars jamming both lanes of Front Street in historic Lahaina town, a scene that portrays the chaos on August 8th as people tried to flee the town as flames engulfed the area.
I was trying to turn right out of my neighborhood, which would have taken me to Front Street, but nothing was moving.
To that end, when I was on the island last week, I appointed Bob Fenton, one of the nation's leading emergency managers, and I mean that's not hyperbole, who's been on the ground in Hawaii since before the fires erupted as our chief federal response coordinator.
Drive us insane and make our hearts swell and burst.
Meanwhile,
through school is Barry Sotoro. His stepfather and adoptive father, Lolo, L-O-L-O Sotoro, died as one of the 20 richest men on the planet Earth. Obama is beneficiary of a trust fund along with his 2 half-siblings. He is probably the richest man to ever occupy the White House.
Another thing, I remember this word Mombasa floating around, which ties into that he portrayed himself as a foreign student. And I remember I didn't even know what Mombasa was. Only later on, upon going to school and learning a little geography, did I know that Mombasa was a place in Kenya.